Oi, what's the best game where you get to eat pie? What's the best game where you play a dead guy? Aye, you'll find out in VG247's podcast. Here, what's the best game where you swing from a rope? And what's the best game where you batter the Pope? Assassin's Creed 2. Like I said, you will find out in this here podcast. Hello and welcome to VG247's Best Games Ever podcast, where we attempt to find the best game within a specific category. For example, this week, because it's a wedding special, we want to find the best game with a wedding in it. One of the most effective use of weddings as a mechanic is arguably in Skyrim, where you can marry a selection of companion NPCs. It's a really popular feature, and the Elder Scrolls community is really hoping it gets expanded on in Elder Scrolls 6, which we're all desperately waiting for, of course, because frankly, Skyrim is getting really long in the tooth now, and everyone's looking forward to the day it finally gets retired. Speaking of which, I'm joined today by Editor-in-Chief Tom Orry. How you doing?
I don't get it, Jim. What are you suggesting?
It's if you make me explain it,
the intro was so long, I just switched off.
I know. I had 30 seconds to write it because it's been a nightmare today. Because it's my first day as an actual full-fledged member of the team.
Maybe the only day.
Yeah.
Yeah, possibly.
My clapping was for him joining, not for the threat of him being sacked, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, it's, as you say, possibly my last day as well. We'll have to see. And it's a wedding special because I also got married last week, which is, and that was Alex's suggestion. So,
You get married?
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah, Alex proposed. Wasn't expecting it, but here we are.
Congratulations to you and Dransfield.
So it's all about weddings, games with weddings in them, and I couldn't actually think of any until it was Donaldson that pointed out that Skyrim has weddings in it, and I've never actually used that feature in the game because I'm such a lone wolf. But I would like to hear from Alex. What your choice is for this game.
What about Kelsey? Kelsey's on this podcast.
Oh God, yeah. Sorry, I've completely forgotten to introduce everyone. We're also joined by guide writer Kelsey and associate editor Alex. Sorry, it has been a week. It's been a month. It's been anyway. It's been that this is the worst intro we've ever done for this. Now that you're not getting me on a premium rate, this is the standard that you're going to get week in, week out. Okay, Alex. Speaking of the nightmare day it's been, you haven't actually sent me what your choice is today, so I'm finding out at the same time as everyone else is.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah,
are you deciding right now? Is that
it has been a day? No. It was always down to two for me, right? But it came down to best game. Okay. So I want to give a special shout out to my second pick, which I only really picked because it's funny, which is the wedding in Days Gone. That Sony first party.
Oh my God.
Has anyone else picked that game?
No,
not like
no. So I just I have to shout that wedding out because that is a wedding where the script, the vows that Sarah, the wife to be, at one point she says, promise to ride me as much as you ride your bike.
And the groom's wearing a backwards baseball cap.
And I think he's wearing a backwards baseball cap and his biker jacket, of course. Yeah. So shout outs to that. But no, my actual pick is it's a very me pick. It is Final Fantasy 9.
I thought you were going to go for 10.
Does 10 have? Oh yeah, 10 does have a wedding in it. Yeah.
Christ.
10 has a wedding that you bust up like a forced arranged marriage sort of deal. But no, I'm going for 9. 9 is a much more light-hearted thing. So at one point in 9, you're on sort of a very classically Final Fantasy trek across an unknown continent that is uncharted, and you come across a town that is entirely populated by dwarves. The town's called Condipeti. All the dwarves speak with a Scottish accent, which is not... obviously, Final Fantasy 9 is not a game that's voice acted, but this is entirely carried over in the text, which is always quite fun. And basically, the place you want to get to is in a sacred area to them. And in order to get there, the only way is sort of through a particular passageway, which is guarded. And the only way in which to pass there is to get married. to complete a ceremony, you know, and it's only married couples that can go into this place, and it's where you need to go to continue tracking down the bad guy and the things you need. And so there's a party of 4, and sort of it's just a great, cute scene where the protagonist and the female lead, who are sort of at that point in a will they, won't they, back and forth of them, they get coupled up and get married. And then the other 2 characters are sort of weird choices. There's a black mage that is basically a child. He's only, you know, he's got the maturity of like a 10-year-old. And there is Kina, who is like a genderless creature where no one quite knows what they are or how to refer to them, and it's a running thing throughout the game. And they get paired off, and the VV, the black mage, ends up like extremely terrified when, after this sham ceremony, the Kina turns to him and says, "I'm so happy," and he's like crying. So it's fun, it's cute, there's good comedy in it, and also Final Fantasy IX is just an amazing game. And I think a lot of the time in games, weddings are either like a mechanic. So they're a mechanic in the sense that they are in games like Harvest Moon, or some of the Dragon Quest games have that, or in The Sims, or they are just this a very cliched story contrivance, sort of as part of a rote love story. And the thing I quite like about this scene is it's just this weird interlude where in between all the battles you are stopped and told that you've got to get married to continue, and there's some fun little cute scenes about it. And actually, you know, it's a scene that sticks in people's mind, because I've only just remembered this, but like when I myself got engaged, after I announced it,
did you pretend to be a Scottish dwarf? Is that what you're saying?
No, but one of the first emails into my inbox was from somebody who worked at Square, and it was just the subject line of the email just said "congratulations," and the body of the email was just a screenshot of that scene. Which, yeah, so it definitely sticks in the mind, I guess, in that sense too. So yeah, that's my pick, Final Fantasy IX. It's good.
Wonderful. I mean, it's not surprising that you picked a Final Fantasy game. I could have guessed that, really, couldn't I? Okay.
What's the deal? I want to know quickly. Though the Scottish dwarves, you say you don't hear them talking. What words do they say written out that gives across that they're Scottish?
Well, it's sort of that. You see it on Twitter a lot, right? Like I'm struggling to think of
like nay and we, and yeah.
I'm struggling to think of specific things because I
feel like I should pipe in here, but I got nothing.
I was going to say, Jim, you know it because you.
Do they talk about oaksters?
They don't talk about oaksters. I think it is a Final Fantasy tradition.
Do
however,
we talk about Dundee United or any real giveaways like that?
It is a Final Fantasy tradition that, generally speaking, the dwarves in Final Fantasy games tend to either be Scottish, Welsh, or Irish. I don't know what that says.
That's dwarves everywhere, isn't it?
I guess so, yeah, to some degree. But I mean, so it's that written out dialect. Obviously it's quite different in Japan. In Japan, they actually have a very specific, they have a very specific like regional Japanese dialect, which I guess is why the localizers chose to make them Scottish.
Japan's got a couple of Scotlands, isn't it? Like Okinawa, you could argue is sort of a bit like Japan, Scotland, and the kind of the northernmost island, Hokkaido. That's a bit Scotland, isn't it? That's a bit it's got its own kind of distinct culture that was kind of steamrollered. And
I think it's one of the like, this is getting way off topic, but it's one of the like hardest things to localize. Yeah. Like it makes me think of the original PS1 Final Fantasy VII, where the guys who translated didn't really know they knew what they were doing, but they didn't really know what they were doing, and they had a shockingly short amount of time to translate it. And so, like towards the end of that game, there's one character who has sort of been playing two roles throughout the story as two different people, so to speak. And they turn to one group of people and they say something, and they are like, "What? Why are you talking like that? That sounds so weird." And he's just talking completely normally. Turns out in the Japanese version, he forgets himself and uses the wrong voice. with the wrong people, and that's completely lost in the translation. And then later, when they did the sequels and stuff, lo and behold, they made one of that character's two dialect Scottish. He speaks in American English and speaks in Scottish in later Final Fantasy VII things. So yeah, and I'm sure will in the remake as well. So yeah, I guess Scottish is a common shortcut for Japanese
Unbelievable, frankly. Okay, right. So we're going to go from Final Fantasy to Kelsey's now, because I think this is probably what probably most people would think of this kind of game, I think.
Yeah, first thing I thought of. So when Tom sent over the topic to me, the first realization I had was that I mainly play horror games or games that are aimed at children, and there's just not many weddings there. But my pick is good, and I have played my pick to completion, and it is Stardew Valley. So, obviously Stardew Valley is a farming simulator that most people know and love. Marriage is a mechanic that I find particularly interesting in the game because it's so kind of divisive for the community, whilst also kind of still bringing the community together. You'll get half the community playing the game and completely neglecting the marriage aspect.
Yeah.
And then you'll get the other half who the marriage mechanic is their favourite thing. And then you can look at any kind of community group on Facebook or the subreddit, and you'll see an abundance of people showing off how great their farms look, but then also people kind of fawning over or bitching about their spouses. To be met with plenty of comments agreeing and plenty of comments being like, is marriage actually worthwhile in Stardew? And it's one of those things where on my first playthrough, I was one of those people that neglected it. And then I went back and was like, okay, let's try this. It's another grind in and of itself, but it kind of makes the experience that bit more fruitful. But then, on top of that, Stardew Valley is just a game that is adorable, 2D pixel art that I go mad for, and it's made by one person, which I think, Final Fantasy IX might be good and all, but I think Stardew Valley is definitely a good contender for the best game that features marriage.
Is marriage sort of crucial to the experience, as you say? But
it's not crucial, but it can change the game. Yeah. Not necessarily significantly, but enough.
Yeah.
The idea you can there's a wedding ceremony. There's 12 different marriage candidates that you can choose from that you have to literally grind and go through all these kind of really sweet cutscenes with as you build up an entire relationship with them. And then you have your marriage ceremony, and then they move in with you, which gives you a bigger house, and they give you gifts and stuff. So it's not game changing.
You get a bigger house. That's
house.
That's like tax breaks. That's like a solid advantage.
Yeah.
So you got there's more than one sort of NPC you can get married to. Do you have to do that in a different playthrough, or can you get divorced, or
you can get
be
divorced
a bigamist?
You can get divorced and go ahead and marry others. You can't marry more than one at a time unless you've got mods. There are mods where there are people who have all 12 NPCs in a bed with them, but each their own. Fair enough.
There's a lot of scope there. Right. Okay, Tom. I notice you haven't got any sort of snide nitpick about Kelsey's choice.
I was thinking, what can I be picky about? And I was going to ask, do you get to see the ceremony? But we've already just mentioned that you do get to see a ceremony, so that's that. I mean, Stardew is a bit. It's a bit of we've seen it all before, right? It's a bit like it's like Harvest Moon. When did that exist?
Harvest Moon is the first game I can think of with that sort of marriage mechanic, where the Super Nintendo original, that was a big part of it, I think. Or it might have been the second Harvest Moon.
Harvest Moon was a big deal for me growing up, but I went from having played the Harvest Moon games to then playing Stardew as an adult, and it's like an expansion on it all, I guess. It's okay, here's all the great elements from Harvest Moon and games like it, but here's what people actually want to do.
Oh, 100%. It's a love letter. It's a love letter to those games. It's a love letter to those games where someone who really loved those games went and made one that was basically the best bits of all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it shows, because you get people talking about Animal Crossing, right? And people say, they wish you could marry the villagers.
Can you not get married in Animal Crossing? Is that not a thing you can do?
The villagers in Animal Crossing typically have the same sort of set of voice lines. And the thing with something like Stardew is as long as you speak to this person every day, they've got entire personalities. You actually get to know these characters and experience new dialogue all the time.
Weddings have happened in Animal Crossing, but they've been more players through multiplayer sort of creating their own weddings, which is why they've made the news and ended up on video game websites when that's happened.
thing is that line that you said then about they have the same dialogue every day. Like, I'm married and I say the same things every day. So maybe it's more realistic.
I mean,
Maybe that's why people like playing Stardew Valley.
I mean, so far, I really like that Stardew Valley is like a wholesome sort of heartfelt depiction of marriage, rather than Alex, this weird like shotgun, like you cannot pass version where you're just forced into marriage by like necessity of the plot. Tom,
Yeah.
speaking of things that are arduous, what are you? What's your choice?
I just had a slight go at Kelsey's choice for not being the most original game when I've picked the game franchise that's probably got more in it than any other game ever. So Mario Odyssey, right? Super Mario Odyssey. I think, I mean, the whole
Is there a wedding in that?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, there is.
Of course there is. I mean, it depends on. I'm going to let Tom speak first.
So it's going to spoil it. The end of the game really here, or at least the first end of the game. So you end up on the moon, right? I'm not going to explain how you get to the moon, but you're on the moon, and that's like another level world to explore in Mario Odyssey. And it's all like, it's quite cool, jump around, low gravity and all, less gravity and stuff. So you're all very you can jump high, and it's all very nice. And you make your way to a church, which you can see as soon as you land there. There's a church in the distance. You go in after completing getting some moons and whatnot. The moons you collect, not the moon itself. And you're in the church, and then like you walk in, and then you can see Bowser, and he's got like and Peach, who he's kidnapped quite early on, and they're all dressed up for a wedding. He's got his like white tux on, and she's got a dress on. He's got this big ring that he's basically trying to force over her entire body as to trap her, essentially, this massive wedding ring.
Or take her swimming.
Yeah. And he's trying to get this, and Mario storms in. He's like, "Oh, Mario, stop it," or whatever, in a Mario voice. And then it seems like this is all a big thing that Bowser's thought of, because suddenly he slams his foot on the floor and a trapdoor opens up beneath Mario, and he falls through. And then you get this, what is a repeated boss battle in Mario Odyssey, where you have Mario fighting Bowser, who has like he fires off his hat, and this is the top hat from the wedding, and then you hit the hat, and then you get some fists and you go and bash Bowser and stuff. So that's the fight there. But the cool bit, and I think, is that after all this happens, then you get another bit where you have to become Bowser, and you kind of bash through some.
And you said I was going to spoil it.
You bash through some rocks and stuff. This is not. If you're listening to this, they'll be like, this explanation is nothing like the actual game, right? So I'm not really spoiling it. You bash through some rocks, there's some cool music on, and at the end of all this, then you're like, oh, Mario's like, yeah, I've won, I've defeated Bowser. And then he goes up to Peach, and then they have Bowser gets up again. It's like, no, and they have this little argument. And then Peach goes, nah, had enough, and she just leaves.
That's what Peach does, yeah.
Yeah, she can't take this squabbling anymore, so just gets on the little ship, the hat ship, and she's off, and then ends up, and then you get like the extra stuff afterwards in the special place to do other stuff. But yeah, it's not so much it's a story bit, I guess, but it does tie into like a nice bit of gameplay that's following it and stuff. And I think as a game, Mario Odyssey actually, it might. This is controversial. I'm sure Alex has something to say about this, and Kelsey potentially, but I think it's the best 3D Mario game.
No,
it's a pretty close call for me.
I think it's the most original, the most consistently sort of delivering new ideas throughout the whole thing. I think it's got a couple of dud levels in like that I don't love, but generally, like, it's got like I don't think I've played a game for more the last 10 years. Like, I've played a lot of Odyssey.
I'm that rare person that doesn't rate the Galaxy games as much as most. So for me, it's Odyssey or 64.
Yeah,
I feel like you played The Witness more than you played Mario Odyssey.
I played The Witness a lot, but that's not what this is about, Jim, is it?
No,
what are you trying to do?
Just nitpicking something you said. So
I played it more than other okay, fine. Maybe I played The Witness more, but I've played through this game once myself, once with my son, who got like 900 moons or whatever it is, and then also again with my son for a second time. So I've seen a lot of this game, and I still think like it holds up even on the third time through. So I think it's like easily the best game of all these three we've discussed. One being basically like a fairly cheap looking remake of an old farming game. And then one that isn't even the best Final Fantasy game. Like
what I'd say is this is in Mario Odyssey, the wedding, I mean, it depends on your definition, right? But the wedding ceremony doesn't actually end up taking place because it gives way to a big fight.
That's not what it's called.
So you kick the door to the church in, and then the wedding is stopped.
Yeah, best with a marriage in it, but they don't actually get married.
No one said a completed wedding. The topic is with a wedding.
I mean, it's a sham marriage is by definition.
Those guests that turned up to the wedding on the moon, they obviously got an invite that said, come to our wedding. They didn't say, come to our not wedding.
So I think Bowser was sitting there putting little invitations together, going on Amazon to find out what
Doesn't Mario
favors.
get an invitation at the start? Isn't that what happens?
Oh, God, he does, doesn't he?
I can't remember.
Yeah, he gets invited to the wedding, I swear.
Probably. My research for this began and ended by watching one video on YouTube that was just this one scene. So I
Bowser does
remember...
literally say, time for my wedding with Peach. But my point is, the wedding doesn't actually take place because Mario is the guy who steps in and is like, you know what? This shouldn't be happening.
Your choice was a complete was like
my choice is so here's the thing. My choice, it's a marriage of convenience. Two little marriages, one after the other.
Right.
One of the two couples ends up actually together for real.
Right.
So it's sort of like this neat foreshadowing of where they're actually going.
I've heard enough. I'm going to play the jingle for the bit where I have to choose something, right? That's been played. Now, right. You two, Alex and Tom, have both chosen games in which the weddings frankly do not count.
The wedding counts in the eyes of the Scottish dwarves. It follows their customs and traditions.
Let's just say, like, if
in your one, they have to pretend to have a wedding in order to gain access to some like bit of a level, which is essentially your wedding, Alex, is the equivalent of Lara Croft pushing through an outcrop. It's just something. It's just some mechanic that they have to do to load up the next bit of the game.
Disqualified.
Right.
Moving on.
Right. Tom.
Moving on. Right.
Is Peach?
Tom, you're not the host.
Is Peach currently married to Bowser in the Mario canon?
I don't know the current status of a marriage, but let's just say, like, you got married recently, Jim, right?
Yeah.
If you invited me, which you didn't, and I'd got an invite, right, and it said come to our wedding, and I came along and I was like, I'm going to a wedding today. Yeah. This wedding that I got invited to my best friend Jim. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'd be there. This is a wedding, and then if for some reason Mario turned up and stopped the wedding.
Oh, if you're saying if Mario turned up and assaulted me at my wedding and then my wife didn't actually want to marry me in the first place.
What was a wedding? It just didn't actually complete.
No, it wasn't a wedding. It wasn't a wedding because Bowser hadn't. It's not like they hadn't courted and then proposed and then like she was there under duress, Tom.
Yeah, he was literally trying to put a ring around her to trap her.
I'm not
rather
saying
than marry her.
At least my characters were getting willingly married in order to.
Well,
I don't know. It sounds like they didn't have much choice. I'm not saying that.
Yeah,
Kelsey's
they didn't have
choice,
much. They didn't
Kelsey's,
have. They
Kelsey's
didn't have
has
much.
the most legitimate wedding in it, right? That's not what the topic is it?
Yeah,
it's not.
They
video
didn't
game
have
with the nicest, most simple wedding, is it?
Yours doesn't have a wedding in it. Yours has basically human trafficking, which you're passing off as a wedding for the purposes of this conversation.
There is no. There's no small print.
I want to say Tom's wedding gives way to an action scene, and it doesn't even get to the vows being exchanged. Mine, it's built within this lovely little scene. Is you've got the inner monologue of the protagonist where this fake wedding is the moment when he realizes he and the female lead really do like each other.
Yeah, but that's not their actual wedding. That's not going to count as their wedding, is it? If they actually get married properly, they'll have another one.
Yeah, well, then they do down the line. She can't, yeah.
So it's not
the point is...
I'm racing to
it's a wedding?
Stardew, where the player gets to choose who they want to marry, and they have to work towards it. Mm-hmm. Very rewarding, very
thus
cute.
reflecting
I don't think
how
marriage,
relationships actually work.
I don't think marriage should be a job, though. It shouldn't be something you work for. It should be something that is natural and easy.
Are you saying that a wedding shouldn't be something that you work for, but like basically human trafficking counts? Is that what? It's fine. Kidnap, fine.
If you can't work for it, just take them. Just kidnap them and take them to the moon.
To be clear, I'm not approving of the relationship in Odyssey.
It's not a relationship.
I'm not approving of the way it happens. Yes, I am, though, very much for the fact that this wedding, even though it does not finish, is more interesting and more entertaining than clicking a mouse on yes, I'll get married or whatever activity you do in the farming game. Here's where
it all comes together for me, right? And Kelsey's won, obviously, right? I think we've established that because we've established that Alex's weddings aren't real weddings. Your wedding is basically a horrendous crime. And Stardew Valley, I mean, all the games everyone's mentioned are like the best in class of their genre. Stardew Valley, you can't argue that Stardew Valley isn't a really good game. Like it's as Alex said, it takes the best qualities of every game of its type that came before it. It's a real love letter to the genre. It's extremely highly acclaimed across the board, and it's the only one of these three games that actually features real weddings where people decide to get married because they're in love with each other, which is the only kind of wedding that really counts, isn't it? So
I don't know. I bet if Mario Odyssey had been like Star Trek The Borg or something, if that was its name, and it had the exact same wedding in it, and they got married on like some kind of weird planet with fluffy fluffball creatures.
There is actually an FMV game called Star Trek Borg, and it doesn't have a wedding in it.
All right. Well, if it did, and it was not a real wedding, you'd still like it more than Stardew Valley.
I probably do like the average Star Trek game more than I like Stardew Valley, but that's because I've got something wrong with me. But I still wouldn't argue that it deserves to win this category over Stardew Valley. So,
I'm looking forward to watching the marriage in Stardew Valley on YouTube, and it's going to be. I imagine it's such a wonderful scene.
It's not about the wedding. It's about the grind for the wedding.
Oh, okay.
So you don't want to watch the wedding. You want to watch the cutscenes that lead up to it.
So the wedding itself, you're saying, isn't very good.
No, but the game's good.
Yeah, but the game's good.
Wow.
The game's good, and it's a legitimate wedding. I mean, you can live quite happily if you had a crap wedding, surely. Like if the day itself was like rainy or whatever, like that song. Anyway, look, let's finish this up because we're going in circles now. Stardew Valley is the best game with weddings in it, and that's what's going in.
Like I said, you will find out in this here podcast.
If you enjoyed the show, please give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. It really helps us get the word out. We're not just a podcast, of course. If you'd like to hear more from the team, then check out VG247.com for our fantastic news coverage, features, reviews, and game guides. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.